Question, what percent does the top 1% pay in federal income taxes?
None.
I think it's about 40 to 50%. No, I believe it's about 35%. Then the top 10% pays 50 to 60%. Top 50% pays 99%. The bottom 50% of earners only pay 1%. Did you know we actually have the most progressive income tax system in the entire Western world? Did you know that?
I did not.
Oh, we do. Of course you didn't know that. Why know anything before having an opinion? What the f*** is wrong with you? You're probably a raised taxes person, aren't you? But you didn't even know that we have the most progressive income tax in the entire Western world? You think,
I know that.
You think the top 1% pays 0%? Okay, but that's actually just not true according to IRS data.
Comparatively.
No, that is the percentages. Compared to what? Compared to the bottom 50%? No, compared to the bottom 50%, the bottom 50% only pays 1%.
It's a lot more than what?
Then they should?
Yes.
The bottom 50% shouldn't pay 1%?
It's something like...
That's interesting you say that, because you know the social programs that you love and you beg for that the entire European Union does. You know how they pay for it? They pay for it with a VAT tax. You know what a VAT tax is?
What's a VAT?
Oh, wow. So you don't even know how they pay for the social programs that you're begging for.
Well, but that's taxes.
But what's a VAT tax?
Another type
This
of
is
tax.
pathetic. It's a national sales tax. So overall, that is a less progressive tax than we have anywhere here. So the poorest people over in Europe have to pay a flat sales tax to pay for the social programs that they benefit. They pay a higher percentage of their income to taxes as a national base to get those percentages. Where you say the bottom 50% shouldn't even pay 1%? No, if we were going to mimic their systems over there, they would be paying much larger than 1%. You don't know what the f*** you're talking about. Pathetic.
What am I talking about?
You just said the bottom 50% should pay less than 1%.
I said that they are.
What?
I said that the billionaires are not paying their fair share.
How do you define fair share?
It should be relative to what they make.
Trust me, on what they make, income-wise, they are paying their 40%.
Well, but if they're saying that they only made $70,000 that year.
You're talking about their business? That's not what they make, that's their business, and that's relatively fair if they're employing and investing a lot in R&D and new technology. You know we have that tax structure for a reason, so people are investing in the United States economy, so they're building more products, so they're employing more people, which actually contributes more to the tax base overall in the end, because when they employ more people, that creates payroll taxes on both ends, and it actually creates more income tax on the people making over 6 figures. That actually provides more money overall, because if you collect all the money from all the billionaires in the world, we'd be able to fund our federal budget by what? 50, I think a half a year? So we create more taxes by creating those tax structures and employing more people. Mm-hmm. So
or unionize the top 10 ones.
Okay, you just come in with a talking point. It's just like, what the what the was that? Nothing to do with the point I said.
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV. I know the problem, you've got just one policy. You do the opposite of what the Donald does. Don't know what you believe just because you got that TDS. You've tested positive. There's nothing I can do for chronic low IQ. It's TDS. Open the borders, let Mamdani pick your pocket. Let the boys beat the girls, they got that extra rocket. A theology degree from Starbucks. You declare that America sucks. You got that TDS. You've tested positive. There's nothing I can do for chronic low IQ. It's TDS. Let's get this party started. If you're left, you're blue and probably retarded. Like Rosie, De Niro, Jimmy Kimmel, Kathy Griffin. No kings, no kidding. We don't live in Great Britain. If J6 was the worst thing you've ever seen, Soros, burning Sadies, a mostly peaceful thing. Bring back the cartels, commute their crimes, sack the fact checkers like the New York Times.
Luke, I am your daddy.
You got that TDS. You tested positive. There's nothing I can do for chronic low IQ. It's TDS. No matter what he says, you must be really dumb, 'cause you keep blaming Trump for your problems.
Side effects of Trump derangement syndrome may include violent behavior, delusions, nightmares, insomnia, irrational hatred, hopelessness, anxiety, depression, blue hair, tantrums, inability to form coherent speech, difficulty maintaining gainful employment, and verbal diarrhea.
There's no cure in sight.
Hey guys, welcome to the program. For you today, I have something that's going to knock your socks off, just like it knocked my camera off. I've got something for you that's absolutely going to knock your socks off. Because you've actually, over the last 5 or 6 years together, you've actually gone through this process. You didn't understand that necessarily you were part of it, and you were kind of watching it unfold. I'm doing this because we have a untalked about crisis in our scientific and medical community. Yeah, think pandemic. That it's all based on phony science, phony meds, phony algorithms, the whole bit. It's called the replication crisis. And you have actually, because you're in the knowledge base, you've actually participated in a process that tries to hold all of this to the most significant standard there is. And so I'm gonna take you through that. By the way, today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Goldco. That's why I partner with them. I want you to understand that we're going to hit a time where our money is going to go digital. We're not going to be able to avoid it. We're not going to be able to avoid it. It's just that simple, okay? And when I tell you that, basically what it means is an event's going to come that's going to change all of our lives. And that event, okay, is going to be that money in the world, as you know it, is going to change. It's just going to change. You might understand this under the radar of why in the hell did they actually change the IRS and make it where if you deposit $600, it goes on to a register to the government. It used to be $3,000. Well, the reason that's done is so the government, not that you can keep tabs on all their money, you cannot, but they can keep tabs on all your money. It's going to be a pretty serious issue come the future, but it's been done. It's coming. And this is why you have to have gold and silver as part of your asset portfolio, a physical, right? A physical element in your portfolio. This is not hype. This is not fearism. It's just basically meaning you got to understand if everything's digital and somebody gets pissed off at you government-wise, they can basically have a way to hold you hostage. And this is my main concern now is, wow, can you imagine what everything happened with COVID and everything else? That if the government, which we tend to piss off, decided to hold us hostage, and you'd have to fight it. Give you an example. They decide you posted something medically that they don't like, that they're upset about. So they decide to freeze your accounts. Well, now you can't pay your mortgage, can't buy your groceries, can't pay your electric bills, and they could hold you up indefinitely. That's the danger of going digital money, especially in the system. Because remember, where in old times you could keep your cash out. If it goes all digital, there is no such thing as cash not in the system. Think of it if a country was conquered. Yeah. Think the most horrible thought you can think. The country was conquered. Evil invaders come in. They'd control 100% of everybody's money and wealth. That'd be it. This is why you need to understand gold and silver. And all I'm asking you to do is request your free gold and silver kit today just by going to jovanlovesgold.com. This is why I partnered with Goldco. This is why you need to understand it, because now is the time to protect your money with gold and silver. So please, do yourself a favor and cover your ass. That's it. Now, in today's program, I'm going to go a little bit on backwards history, just a few years here, so you understand you've been through this, so you'll understand how the replication crisis works. Because you right up front understand this methodology of true science when you apply the sciences to something to solve a problem. Science is supposed to be duplicatable. That's the key. If science is valid, it's supposed to be duplicatable. But the question is, has our industry, in the medical industry, been hijacked? That it's about, well, if you pay them enough money, you pay them under the scenes, you put them on payroll, they'll get out the message you want to get. I'll give you a prime example. I think back to everything we did for the Arizona audit. We got a contract to do that work, to basically look at over 2 million ballots. We came up with 25 methodologies to do it, went through the entire scientific process, and it was a $210,000 contract. For all that work, never been done before in American or world history, ever. And then as we go through this process, I'm just giving you touch points so you'll understand how this works. We find out as we go through this process of everybody, it's the machines, don't clean the voter rolls, don't do that, that people rose to prominence or understanding. And basically you're saying, well, wait a minute, you can't do it on a mathematical theory. You can't use a trickery of formulas and algorithms because it can't be proven. And then you find out some really horrible things. Remember the guy that pops up and tells everybody, don't bother checking the voter rolls?
So you have a centralized statewide voter roll that's on networked machines.
Remember that? They crisscrossed the country. Let me give you an example. Recently, when I look at this, to give you some backstory, this all relates to today's program. You need to understand. You see this war. You've seen this war. You understand it. You understand what's done. But now it can affect your health in serious ways, and that's why I'm going deep on it. In that particular scenario, as we're getting with the Arizona audit, and everybody's paying attention to the paper and everything else, I got a call from that fellow. And the call from that fellow was, look, everybody needs to work together. You need to get on my team. We're getting everybody together. You need to share your work with us. And you need to help us out. And I asked, well, why would we do that? His answer was, well, we're all in this together. and we need to work together as a unified force. Now, on the face of it, that kind of makes sense, right? But then I explained to him, I don't do what you do at Cause of America. This was before people understood what Cause of America was in the background. I said, I don't do what you do. My work is totally unique, and I'm under a Senate contract. I'm not public information. I'm private information. So even if I wanted to, I can't really share stuff with you. That would be inappropriate. And he says, but you got to become part of my team, and we're all volunteering together and do it. Now let's accelerate to just a few months ago. We found out that Mike Lindell has been paying that guy to say what he says, do what he does, get people to volunteer. But he's been paying that guy $200,000 a month. Correction, you've been paying that guy $200,000 a month with your donations. You paid that guy to stand up there in front of hundreds of lawmakers and say, don't clean the voter rolls. It's like sweeping a dirt floor. So you understand that, right? $200,000 a month. I'm not stuttering. A month. Then recently, you remember when I've been breaking down all the different stuff that's been going on, understanding the Lindell report. This is their report. Right? Their report. One of their reports mentions in here Fulton County register rate of 113.8% citizen voting age population, insinuating it has overpopulation. It was all manufactured, but it's not. You can't use that data. You can't use that data in court. But here it is, and I'm breaking down every one of these, right? There's 560 some odd claims. I'm doing every one of them to help you understand, right, how all this works and what you can really do in court. Well, that one claim right there supposedly comes from a fellow by the name of Kevin Monkla. Now, I know that name. I know that name because behind the scenes, whether it was him or his wife, all this time, they are pinging me for information. How would you look at this? What do you think about this? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My understanding is it was always Texas because he's located in Texas. When I finally get to looking at it, I understand that they've been inserted into Georgia and stuff as well. I posted a link. You can see my Twitter response to this. But with this guy back-channeling me a lot, I actually kind of thought he was an ally. You know what he didn't disclose? Never. He never disclosed that he was actually part of Mike Lindell's team. He just led me to believe he was an independent researcher. I try to help where I can. I also didn't know, and he didn't offer, that he is being paid $183,000. $183,000, which Mike Lindell listed in his filings as legal work. But this guy isn't an attorney. In fact, when you look at his background, it's like, wow, when you find out certain things. Paid $183,000 for legal work. And here's the result of his claim here. Here's a statistic. They have more people than this. And I showed you how it is. Paid $183,000 as we scramble over here on the paper trying to keep ends going. Now, the reason I bring this up to you, this same process and strategy is duplicated in the medical world. You have certain standards that have always been set for science to basically prove everything. But if you go against what the system's trying to do, and if you go against how things work, you're going to have detractors that are put in place to make sure your research never sees lights of day, but somehow they manage to get on the talking points, get on the interviews, and get on the list. That's why I say you've experienced this, and I'm going to take you through it. But folks, this one is appalling. It's called the replication crisis. And what it is phony science, phony influencers, phony medications, and it results in American deaths, share this program. This is going to be a wild one.
Rennie Good was a gifted soul, a writer and a poet and a mother. Wow, she tried to hit an agent with her car. Oh no, pop motherfucker, now she's gone. Yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. You fuck around and find out it's what it is. Jeffrey Pretty was a Jewish homo. Started talking shit to protect a chomo. He was getting nicked when he pulled a gun. Bam, motherfucker, now you're gone. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with a septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. Fuck around and find out what that is.
Warning. The following program has been rated Dilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you. Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.
Okay, guys, we're going to get geeky a little bit, but it's something that's definitely affecting you, has affected you, and will affect your life going forward. This is something that's kind of on the hush-hush. This is something that's out of control. It's called the replication crisis. Phony science, phony meds, American deaths. Now, one of the things you should know about me, although people say, he's a treasure hunter. I have in excess of 200 patents in the field of medical science, medical testing, medical application devices, technology, etc. Over 200 granted patents. It is a field that I've worked in for a very long time. And in fact, it's that field in medicine, what I set out to change and improve in medicine to advance it for mankind, that led me to understand of what I could do in kinematics, which is how I looked at the audits, right? To understand what can I do in kinematic artifact detection. Because my first work was looking at the disease state artifacts within people's, it will sound weird, but bodily fluids. And that I could detect things that traditional science couldn't see. And I'll give you an example of one of my patents. You know how you have your mobile phones and you have little device covers on them? Well, that thing goes in your hand. How many times a day do you pick up your phone? Well, some of the breakthroughs I was able to do was you can put, don't think it a bad word, monitoring devices in your phone cover. Now, remember, because you have the computer in your hand and you have connectivity. Well, I can use the back sensor of this phone to monitor sweat, tiny, tiny, tiny microscopic sweat drops from your hand. I can do the same thing in your mouse if on a desktop. And by regularly looking at it, you can find out, is something beginning to cook in your biology, in your system, that could head you down a dangerous path. This is, I understand how science is set up. A woman figures out she has breast cancer. She palpitates, or asks me to palpitate and find, but she palpitates and finds a little pea size in her breast, goes, oh my God, I should get it checked out. Well, that means the cancer is there. The cancer is growing. I work in the space of, is cancer coming? Has the environment in your body been set up to predispose you to this? And also you can look at my patents. I have a lot of patents. I was the first one to do it. I was the first one to connect genetic testing and certain conditions in the bodies and using the DNA marker to head off to decide by DNA, are you predisposed to certain immunological conditions that will create you grief? I own that patent. I am the creator of it. And so what I show you today is a space I tremendously understand. It's part of my work every day you never see. It's part of my work that you deal with the worst bureaucracies in the world, right? Inside a multi-trillion with a T, multi-trillion dollar industry. Now that I set that up, I want to give you just a little bit of understanding of how everything is supposed to work when it comes to medicine, because what we're specifically talking about is medicine. But first, let me explain the replication process. Is that okay? Anytime you do anything in science, computer science, material science, agri-science, healthcare, it doesn't matter what it is. Anytime you break grounds in science, and it's going to be used for mankind, you are required to publish what is called a scientific reader. Now, I'm going to explain this to you. This, you've seen it before. You can get it if you want. For everything we did in the audits, to here it is, here's everything. You publish a scientific reader for the scientific community, or in this case, the forensic community at large. Now, why do you publish one of these? And this is why I said, you've been through this. I want you to understand it. You've seen it work, but it has now gotten uncoupled and broken within our medical system, and it's killing folks. Okay? But here's the deal. This is what's called a scientific reader. Now, you do that. This is not where you find, well, what were the results of your test? This is not what were the results of the audit. This is, if you have the data and you want to duplicate what my team did, then you basically follow the methodology, because this is published for the whole world to see. Here's why we did it, why we chose it, etc. And if you want to validate it, we're not talking about some 6-degree polynomial that was based on 4 counties in Michigan, because even you understand if you use 6 counties, the number change, or if you use 4 counties in Kansas, it disputes itself. Get it? That's why formula matters. And formulas have to be duplicated, so you're not cherry picking results. Now, everything in the world in science, especially medicine, should work this way. Okay. Now, a scientific reader, which is key to all of this, basically it's published. It is not for peer review. That's a common misconception. It is not published for peer review. It is published specifically for the purpose of duplicating and supported by here's all the peer review previous that says this works. You got to show everybody the peer review, right? In other words, it'd be like saying that the machines flipped the votes. Every county, I can predict 99.8% it was done by a 6-degree polynomial. What is actually required in science is you have to show where that's been done before. You have to show where this is valid science. You have to say this is how you duplicate it, and then you reveal your formula and let people duplicate it. The problem is when people get to the formula, you find out it's a 1 in 80 billion chance that it was actually correct. Well, you actually publish these things because what you're doing is you're creating a permanent, searchable record of human knowledge. This is how you share your work with the scientific community. The scientific community will eat your freaking lunch. You might look at it and go, or some people, nice cover. Oh, I like that bow tie with the American flag, and you got a cross. It must be right if you have a cross on. Well, see, science doesn't work that way. So there's a scientific method behind it. See, you basically have to explain your methodologies that you do are science, and they have been peer reviewed. Not you, those methodologies have been used. Then what you do is you take all the peer reviewed information, you apply it to your original research, and you show in a structured format, okay, this is what we're doing. Now, what that leads to is you basically sharing the knowledge openly. Here it is. The goal is you can take these results and you can duplicate them. And you show it is all based on peer-reviewed science. That's what ensures quality. But you're building a permanent record of facts. Now, why do you have the permanent records of facts? If your work truly is scientific, if your work truly is monumental to mankind, if your work is going to totally transform something and you know it, you have to publish a scientific journal. I'll give you an example. You're not going to get a Nobel Peace Prize because you're a nice guy. You're going to get a Nobel Peace Prize because scientists around the world can take your scientific reader and duplicate everything you do. Does that make sense? Now, to show you how this works, to understand it, because that's why I said you've been through this, and that's why I want you to understand you are intimately familiar with how the process goes. You just probably didn't realize it's the structured process. It is the structured document process, which this book will be around hundreds of years even after I pass. So it is validatable by anybody in science. Now, I'm just going to use this one where we're looking at the results of the audit so you understand what do you do and how these things are structured, because we're about to hop off into medical. So in the journal, Scientific Reader, that we were required to publish by the scientific standard, when it came to what we did for the audits, you've got to start with, okay, where are you starting? Well, you see that right there in the table of contents. That's page 15. That's called the Maricopa Report 7.0. This is when we really start getting a grasp of what it is, and we're building for the scientific community to duplicate. Here's where we're starting. By the time we got to Maricopa 7.0, we already know where everything's headed. Now, if you look down, the next thing you have to do, if you have to explain, okay, what is your platform? People have to understand how you're using it. But if you look at chapter 2, here's the method. It begins with paper. Chapter 3, okay, it is a use of computer vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and convolutional neural networks for recognizing human writing and document classification. What did we really do? Remember, we're not talking about opinion. We're talking about science. Science has to be based on fact. And basically what we're saying, we're going to use the established technologies of computer vision, like self-driving cars, right? Machine learning, artificial intelligence, and we're putting it together in what's called a convolutional neural network, meaning we're taking these to create a thinking process. And we only have one goal. And what is that one goal? To recognize human writing and document classification. Why? You go to chapter 2, it's all about the paper. Now, this is how you establish science. If you look at the rest of the chapters, it basically, chapter 4 is here is where forensic images have been used to literally tell the difference between human handwriting and machine created writing. Chapter 5, here is digital image matching in the 2D realm for computer vision. Chapter 6, here are print calibration standards, use of scanners and the errors which could occur. Chapter 7, here it is called DJVU, why scan quality matters in kinematic artifact detection. Chapter 8, calibration standards for scanning dual-side documents. And Chapter 9, basically, you got to understand a few things changed in Maricopa. So here are the voting laws before and after COVID. Why? Because we're looking at an election that occurred during the COVID era. So you have to say this was before, this was afterwards. So this is where you establish the science. Then, for people to duplicate your work, they have to understand, okay, what is everything in place for these sciences already, and what are the things being questioned, which leads you to the next part. Everything then goes into attachments. This is a 530-page document, okay? So they have to understand, okay, these, but here is where Maricopa stands. Here's all their documents. Here's what they say. Then it goes to the manufacturers. Here's the manufacturers that are involved in this process. Here is what they say, like Pro VMV, SLI compliance, Dominion voting, Roland security. You have to explain everything in their fixed standards. And then you have to present white papers that have been previously published and peer reviewed that basically say, hey, you can actually find these things out because it can be used, and here's how it's being used. So that's how you establish a scientific reader and a scientific message. Now, you watched every bit of that go. So you have a good gauge of what to expect. Now, I tell you that because that is what's required for the scientific method. This got set up long ago. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of peer review when it comes to archaeology, because if you were to find ancient Phoenicians in the St. Lawrence River, right here, North American side, and you try to publish an article on it, and it goes out to peer review, everybody's going to come out the woodwork, and that's fake, that's false, that's whatever. It's because they have an agenda. The agenda is driven by the prevalent thinking that got people there. Therefore, it's very close to new sciences. Archaeology introduces very few new sciences to figure these things out, which is why I pioneered what's called the BOP process, or ACE theory, in archaeology, where the circumstances, the coincidences, then actually become the confirming evidence. Now, we went through this process in elections, you watched it unfold, but have you ever looked at it behind the medical scenes? Let me tell you what's going on behind the medical scenes, so you understand a raging controversy that the news isn't talking about.
We have peer review, high impact editors in most of the journals. that are the most high impact saying that they don't believe what is being published in those journals is trustworthy anymore, and no one cares. Now imagine if the editor of the New York Times came out and said, I think more than 50% of what we're publishing in the New York Times is fake. You think that would ruffle any feathers? But when Marcia Engel does that as the head of the New England Journal of Medicine, it doesn't even make the nightly news. No one's talking about it. The BMJ, the Lancet, all of those editors have come out and said, we have a huge problem. We can't replicate this research, and we actually don't even know who did the research. In some cases, they're going back and trying to find the labs where the research has been done in Iran or China or wherever. The lab doesn't exist. So when I tell you that everywhere we've looked for corruption, we've found it, this is what I want everybody to really take away, because it's not just health. It's literally, the corruption it's penetrated everything.
Now, let's put it into context to something you understand. If you were to look at me as an inventor, one of the first peer reviews I go through for anything I do is the United States government. And that's just getting the patent prosecuted. They are peer reviewing it at the scientific level to basically determine not only is it valid, which doesn't matter as much, but are you infringing on something else? In one patent, you're basically defending your case on average against 70 other things out there. That's known as prior art. So you're building a case study with the United States government against those 70 things, 70 different things, 70 different ways to prove it to the patent office it's valid. And then when you understand it goes through that process, you're doing that 190 times over. Why? Because there's 190 individual countries out there that if you're going to do a global patent, you want your patent in. Yes, some of them are consolidated, but you still have to fight them, prosecute them one-on-one, pay the fees for them one-on-one. Now, as your body of work is out there, then people start studying what you created, okay, in their work. That is basically what's called a peer review citation. They look at your work, they look at what you said, what you established. They go, wow, this is great. I can make it better. Let's do something else. Now, if you were to look at my body of peer-reviewed citations, it's an ungodly number that exceeds 10,000 individual citations, references, and peer studies of my body of work. So I'm sharing this with you because I want you to understand. I understand completely how it works. But let's go back to our words. Here it is. Systems are set up to make sure the science is good. This is one thing that pisses me off about election integrity that I complain about, right? That we're using failed physical and failed legal sciences to try to prove something that we can all prove, that our elections are corrupt. But see, science cuts two ways. Either science is presenting a provable fact, or they're trying to present bullshit as science, which is why I told you I was absolutely floored to find out the quote unquote author of this fact, that Fulton County registration data rate of 113.8%, right? That's not scientifically provable or fact in a court of law. But then I find out that Mike Lindell paid $183,000 for that. Excuse me. Your donations to the Lindell Fund allowed a person to get $183,000 and basically put out that fact they put in their report. But then let's think of it as court of law. That person, just like Dennis Montgomery, couldn't appear in a court of law, just like Conan Hayes couldn't appear in a court of law, all this questionable stuff. Holy shit, this person has one of the most egregious court adjudicated items that are normally criminal that are off the freaking charts, that it was ordered by the court to pay a $3 million punitive fine. That person could never sit in a court seat ever and be taken seriously. He has no basis in it. But why did the industry pay $183,000 for the report from somebody they could never put on the witness stand? Now, that's what she's talking about across medicine. You experienced this in COVID because we're now finding out all of the COVID supposed science journals were all kinds of people that came out of nowhere with no backgrounds making claims, but the claims could never be validated. I want you just to listen to her one more time. Listen to what she's saying.
We have peer review, high impact editors in most of the journals that are the most high impact saying that they don't believe what is being published in those journals is trustworthy anymore, and no one cares. Now imagine if the editor of the New York Times came out and said, I think more than 50% of what we're publishing in the New York Times is fake. You think that would ruffle any feathers? But when Marcia Engel does that as the head of the New England Journal of Medicine, it doesn't even make the nightly news. No one's talking about it. The BMJ, the Lancet, all of those editors have come out and said, we have a huge problem. We can't replicate this research, and we actually don't even know who did the research. In some cases, they're going back and trying to find the labs where the research has been done in Iran or China or wherever. The lab doesn't exist. So when I tell you that everywhere we've looked for corruption, we've found it, this is what I want everybody to really take away, because it's not just health. It's literally, the corruption it's penetrated everything.
Now, you understand inherently the term that corruption has penetrated everything, okay? And corruption has penetrated everything, even down to election integrity. There is no integrity in it. So imagine this. The very people put in place to safeguard health, it doesn't mean they're the people developing the technologies. It doesn't mean they're the people manufacturing the technologies. They're a layer of protection designed there. It's been this way for a long time. Basically, we got to look at everything. Our minds can understand it. We can understand it. We'll look at it. On every side of an equation, you have people that are either in the system, for the system, get paid by the system, and will agree to and say anything the system wants to put out. Doesn't matter what the category is, the system's broke. Just like I think might have been Knoxville, the entire Knoxville Sheriff's Department, I think yesterday, all got indicted for corruption. An entire sheriff's department. That's the system, all corrupt. But on the same side of the system, you always have people that care about the science, care about their job, care about what they do. They have started coming out and saying 50% of what we're publishing in our journals just isn't valid. It is not true. And we are being forced to publish it. Just like you were told that ivermectin was horse paste and didn't work. You understand what I'm saying? It's an agenda driven by greed and control, to maintain homeostasis. Just like I told you, the GOP doesn't want the voter roll fixed, so they put out all this propaganda. This is how this machine works. Well, it's being exposed. I want to explain it to you from what is called the replication crisis. Now, why do you publish scientific readers? So it can be replicated. So in the medical world, in the science world, which I live, it has a replication crisis. So let me explain what this is. It basically means the industry has suffered a backlash. You understand, you don't trust the legal system anymore. You don't trust judges anymore. You don't trust elections anymore. And we certainly don't trust the medical establishment at any level anymore. Well, when you understand that the system needs chaos to force change, you can understand why it allowed all that stuff to go into chaos. So in the medical world, people that are with the system are doing one thing. People that are for America and making America great again and for the American people are going, wait, hell no. Well, this crisis that has come forward in the scientific journals, specifically in psychology. Remember, I have a book coming out called Orphan Parent Epidemic. Psychology is putting out bunk. That's the same people that told you cut off a dick, you're a woman. Take your forearm, cut off your labia, roll up your forearm skin into an outie, stuff it with nothing. It's a penis. You are now a man. Psychology is behind that first before medical ever gets to it. So we have this crisis in the psychology field, the medicine field, and the biomedical fields. First, understand those. The psychology field, especially medicine, tells you, oh, hey, this is great. This is why we need it. And this is why people will hurt if they don't get it. Think transagenda. The medical field is where it's practiced. Yes, we've got to do this $189,000 surgery on this toddler because in the womb it was really trans and the mom knows that. And therefore, we're going to remove this little bitty tiny girl's mammary glands. We're going to do it now so there's no scars so she grows up a boy. That's the practice field where it's implemented for money. Where it's developed for money, right? Where it's developed for money is the biomedical field. That's where the test or the pieces or the drugs or whatever are created. This section manufactures it, sells it to this group that gets it implemented, put in health insurance plans, and these people over here justify why it's right. Right now in the United States of America, what is coming out, it started during a particular administration. I'm going to give you a pop quiz. When did it all fundamentally change America? What administration do you think this occurred under, where everything in science went out the door? Put it in chat. Pop freaking quiz. You're probably guessing the Obama era, and you're exactly right. There was a distinct change being monitored that came, and remember, that's when we got transgender toilets and all this other stuff. This happened specifically traced back to the Obama era. Since then, when you do a scientific study and when you put this stuff out, it's so the world can replicate it and say it's valid. But in the Big Mike era, all of a sudden, nope, you've got to trust the science. You trust what we say. You don't trust what you can replicate. Since 2010, it looks like all of the scientific journals that are there as a failsafe to protect the health of Americans, that 60% of everything submitted could not be duplicated. 60%. I'll go back and give you an example. Everybody accepted in election integrity that if you take the 2010 census, isn't that interesting, the same year? You take the 2010 census, you run an analysis of how many people should vote. You do a poll of 1,000 homes. You look at 4 counties in Michigan that you can accurately, with 99.8% accuracy, tell how every vote was cast in America for all the voting precincts. And it was a 6-degree polynomial math figure that did it. And here it is, and that's proof it was bad. Now, nobody ever checked the science. So imagine that. You submit it. In the fight for saving America, you submit it. What they don't want you to do is they don't want you to check and replicate it. But what they do is they put it out there on a 475 city tour. They put millions of dollars into it, all telling you time, I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid. Well, they're funneling it through other organizations to convince you it's true. But then invariably, science comes along and goes, how did you come up with this again? And they take every fact that's ever been claimed and they basically do the math. Now, what people got told in over 500 cities and lawmakers got told was true, when science was put to it, it had a 1 in 80 billion chance of being correct. You could win the mega lottery every day of the week, of the month, of the year for 100 years easier than this actual fact being true. Now, that's why I said you've been in on this, you've seen it happen. Well, we now know that in our medical industry, pre-medical research has been captured, psychology has been captured. That's why kids are cutting off parents. And nobody looking at science, the thing that's supposed to drive us, can even verify it. But it got published, touted, promoted as fact. Now, one of the key things here where they do this smoke and mirrors is called p-value, but I won't bother you with the mathematics of it. Basically, what they do is they use a failed premise of what's called ridiculous initial sizes. So let me ask you a question. Could you predict the outcome of the 2020 election using a 2010 census, which, by the way, we know the censuses are bad, and what you think happened in 4 counties and knocking on 1,000 doors in America? Can you tell what happened to a 99.9% accuracy? This was it. No, because why? The sample size is too small. Same things happen in medicine. Then the other issue that's coming on is the research practices. How did you do it? How did you figure it out? Right? Now, this comes into a category called selective reporting of outcomes. In the medical field, they'll find one way to justify it, and then that becomes the outcome. I'll give you an example. Let's use 4 counties in Michigan that had an audit, and we'll make it apply to this theory over here to make it look like it's right. Whereas if you took those 4 counties in Michigan out and you choose any other 4 counties from any other state, and we have 50, it would never even get close and it wouldn't even look at it. That's called reporting of questionable outcomes. It basically favors biased results. And it is 100% weak statistical methods. Now, let me ask you a question. Your doctor tells you, oh my God, you have a fractal polynomial. And Jovan, we got to do something about this right now. I'm going to put you on this brand new prescription for people who suffer from fractal polynomials. You've got to get this filled and you've got to take it. You got to take 2 pills a day. Even with insurance and discounts, it's going to cost you $900 a month. And you're probably going to be on it for the rest of your life. Now, who benefited in that process? The psychologist, the doctor, and the system. But you find all of it, fractal polynomial, is total bullshit picked out of the ass with a hidden agenda. This is what's going on in the medical community. Here's kind of how you have to think about it. You read about an incredible breakthrough drug that says that back pain you suffer from, that spinal cord that was bruised, those discs in your back that were being destroyed or whatever, we've got this drug, right? And it's going to fix it. And you're reading it in scientific journals. Now, imagine you read something like that, but then you find out that when other scientists tried to validate what was being claimed, same thing in elections, when other scientists tried to validate what was being claimed, you find a few things. You find out nobody, not a single person on the planet can duplicate and get the same results. Not a one. But then you find out, even though all the results fall apart, that somebody behind the machine was paying money to get it promoted. So in public opinion and greater opinion, it would look like it was valid. And therefore the market, meaning people, would basically accept it as truth. And by the way, that money, part of it goes to the scientific peer review organizations. Why? Because the drug companies get to buy ads on their channels and books. Yeah, if you sell pillows and you can make $1,000, $2,000 a month, but don't you ever go against what I say, or you're not going to get any commissions. But you follow what I'm saying? This is the crisis that's going on right now in all of medical and biomedical research, 100% across the board. Everybody's experiencing it, but the system won't talk about it because we had this unique effect, which was used to pull off the pandemic. Trust the science. Trust only the people we put in place to tell you what the real deal is. Now, the Lancet, which is where you want to be in this when you're innovating, the BMJ, the Biomedical Journal, you want to be there. They say, and they let you assume there is a peer review process. Now, this too works double-edged, since people that understand a bit about science, what they're doing is submitting junk, which cannot be duplicated, but there's so much financial pressure behind it. They let you assume it's peer-reviewed. And then the science that comes out against it, those same people that get paid to do a message will say, well, I peer-reviewed it and it's not valid. This is because the medical industry is finding out there are paid participants that are cherry-picking the data, relying on weak data, knowing so few people have funding or acumen to duplicate it. See, the way it's supposed to work is when these things come out, you got all of these research labs. You're supposed to say, here is the scientific reader of the information. Now, you take this formula, you take your data, you submit it to this process identically, and see what you come up with. Well, here's the catch. Government that wants to push these things because of lobbyists are the ones that are funding the research stuff. Oh, and by the way, the companies that want the results put those research labs under contracts to research the stuff. You are not going to publish anything to the contrary. You're not going to be taking money from somebody saying out there, we got it all, melt the machines, we have every county, and show it. You're not going to be taking money from them and at the same time go, wait a minute, you never had that shit. You can't pass peer review. It's bullshit. You understand the crux? This is everywhere. And the most alarming is it's been weaponized and is now deadly. I think we can agree that some of the so-called follow the science of social distancing, doing this stuff, or taking this shot and multiple shot or whatever was total bullshit and actually deadly. Yes. But when you look behind it and you look at where did the science come from, what was behind it, you know what you find? You find that both the journals and the trials and everything involved are earning huge money behind it. It's just like I told you about Alexis. I could not believe when I'm having a one-on-one discussion at the request of the president with President Trump in his office, showing him the results. There's a team behind the scenes saying, don't bother with it, don't do that. And you find out that that team was getting funded by the system to the tune of $200,000 a month. The same thing has happened in medicine. You find out somebody who has no background in elections says, well, it's 113% in Fulton County, and here's what really happened. You find out that those people actually are paid to find something, promote something, and assume the role as an expert, so the system takes it. And then what happens is somebody back here lends their name for credibility. Well, it's the Election Crime Bureau, Lindell. I'm going to lend my name credibility. Therefore, it's valid. When it's never valid. It's total bullshit. Well, the same thing has happened in medical, pharmaceutical, etc. We've been caught. Now, behind the scenes, where editors can talk freely in this medical stuff, they're saying, yeah, this is a problem. And, we got to produce this and we got to promote our journals and we sell our reports and the reports based off of their stuff. So we make money and they make money and they're buying ads and we don't want to let them go because they're buying too many ads. Well, these are manipulated, fabricated paper mills turning out fake science. And look at the devastation with just the pandemic, what it wreaked havoc on us. COVID is the prime example. It's only coming out now. I think a lot of that because of RFK Jr. It's finally coming out that it was all crap. But see, the system benefits anyway, because the system, in wanting chaos, wants every institution of trust destroyed with the public. All of this is supposed to be valid science. Valid science by researchers, innovators, etc., that have the background to create it. But you find you got this substitute group in that really don't even exist anywhere. They don't have a science background. They don't have any research background. They don't have any technology background when you look at them, but yet they're putting out reports. This is what has been duplicated across everything from environmental science, climate's warming. That's why they changed it from climate crisis to climate change. Science catch up with it. And what happens is the broken gatekeepers of the system, because there's money involved, they gather around what they're getting promoted to pay, what there's value in association to do. When gatekeeping is designed to keep out weak or fraudulent research. Why did the world believe that the election was run by a 6-degree polynomial? Because somebody poured money into their appearances and stuff, telling you that was the case, when science tells you it is not possible, it's crap. All the time you see nothing happen, right? Public confidence gets eroded. Now, all of this points back to what's called the perverse incentives within academia. If you want to validate something that's not valid, especially if there's a monetary component behind it, all you got to do is buy off academia. Now, in the medical world, it's academia. In the election integrity world, it's not academia. You just buy off other influencers to basically push your shit because enough people believe it. This is it. And what it does is it actually encouraged the system to be gamed. And that's what's happened. And you can see how it's happened across everything. Environmental science, food science, why we can have all these ingredients in our food other countries won't even allow. It's right. It's perverse incentives. This is why in the medical world and then in our country, we have an epidemic of chronic disease, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, promoted by flawed guidelines. Look at the system crumbling right now in SNAP, because it changed from buy all the cookies and shit you want, don't eat real food. And here comes a system or administration that cares and goes, shit, no, it's going to be done by science. Science says that kills you, right? And then all of a sudden, it changes and everybody goes apeshit. You're watching it happen. It's called buying influence. Right now, in the medical world, let me tell you how they pull it off in the medical world. Ready? Get ready, because I want to see if you can draw an analogy of some of the things you've seen happen in the election integrity world. The way to buy influence, which these pharma companies do, is they fund research. Yeah, let's pay somebody over here $200,000 a month to do this opinion. Or we'll pay this person $183,000. We know that all we can find they ever did was a graphic artist with no business background, but they know what happens in elections. Let's pay them $183,000. So you can recognize that. The next thing to do is, ready? To pay for, you ready? Tours and speaking engagements. Oh, if this doctor will say what we want, we'll put them on a tour. We'll make them famous, and they go around just talking to other people saying this is right. The next thing they'll do to pull this off in the medical world is they will hold and pay for conferences and live events where we'll bring in our speakers we approve. We'll hold a conference with a name on it. You'll look like it's the best of the incredible best, which we just bought key names to be there to speak, so you think it's good, but it's really our agenda. Here's the next one. See if it resonates with you. Then the pharmacy companies will fund independent research groups. Those research groups are named Let's Protect the Health of America, Patriot, I'm a Patriot, and You're Not system. And then what we do is we pay them consulting fees because they're helping the cause, when what they're really doing is creating an echo chamber of taking this is what we need people to know, and it looks like all these guys agree with it, and they're all different organizations, where when you look underneath it, they're all funded. Then the last little bit that they do in the pharma world, which I think mirrors in the election integrity world, if you go along with what the sponsors do, then you personally are more likely to get published, shared, and promoted. Oh, by the way, and if you have any dirt, we will never talk about your dirt. We'll hold you up. Can you see a pattern here? It doesn't matter what category you want to do it in. What we're talking about, folks, is how all of this is infiltrated in the replication crisis. Phony science, phony meds, American deaths. That's why they'll tell you, nope, we got to do this TransCare for a $200,000 medical procedure because a kid might suicide himself, and we've got to save the kids. Can you see how this is? The replication part should be the science and the facts. The replication part is turning this out into a system that actually creates corruption in the system, and where you're looking at things that are supposed to be truth-telling, that you're looking at for truth. Basically, you can't find anything, but you sure can track down what? A lot of fucking money tied to it. A lot of money tied to it. And the healthcare world, what we need, want, and should be doing is creating genuine breakthroughs. But they're not promoting genuine breakthroughs, genuine knowledge, just like in audits. What they're promoting is profitable treatments. Now, just like in elections, in healthcare, the human cost to all of us is enormous. In the medical world, it might cost American billions of dollars of failed crap, but it's their money paying for it, or the healthcare system, which is still passed on to you. Or in elections, we get bad officials. We get nothing solved. We chase squirrels and we lose trillions in the process because our government's overtaken. This is the same thing. In the medical world, what's going on is this is no longer translating to better health. It's translating to better profits. It's all being based on incredibly shaky results that cannot be duplicated, but the system is relying on the advice of so-called experts that, in fact, the actual industry that's benefiting from it created. We're trapped in this system many ways. This is why I advocate science. I test the math, prove the math, test the formula. That's what I'm doing when I break down every one of these and I give you the analytics behind a 2-sentence claim and help you understand it. It's so you can understand it. Now, what's at stake? Let's just take this one in the medical industry right now that people are blowing the whistle on, but it's not getting any traction. Sounds a lot like what's really going on in elections. Listen again.
We have peer review, high impact editors in most of the journals that are the most high impact saying that they don't believe what is being published in those journals is trustworthy anymore, and no one cares. Now imagine if the editor of the New York Times came out and said, I think more than 50% of what we're publishing in the New York Times is fake. You think that would ruffle any feathers? But when Marcia Engel does that as the head of the New England Journal of Medicine, it doesn't even make the nightly news. No one's talking about it. The BMJ, the Lancet, all of those editors have come out and said, we have a huge problem. We can't replicate this research, and we actually don't even know who did the research. In some cases, they're going back and trying to find the labs where the research has been done in Iran or China or wherever. The lab doesn't exist. So when I tell you that everywhere we've looked for corruption, we've found it, this is what I want everybody to really take away, because it's not just health. It's literally, the corruption is, it's penetrated everything.
This is an epidemic that needs to be treated. The system, once again, it all kind of coincides with the Obama administration. These things just keep on pointing back, keep on pointing out. Something fundamentally changed. But he did promise to your face to fundamentally change America. They did. Folks, that's why I tell you, if you are not digging deeper and take the time to feed your brain, because we're the cure, you have been captured. The global pharmaceutical market is $2 trillion. In 3 years, it will be $3 trillion. One company doing this makes $60 billion a year. They create money for everything, but that's where you find the incestuous mingling. You find out a lot of this in election integrity is tell you, you see all these nonprofit names, but you find one common funder behind it that never disclosed they're funding it. Right now, if you were just to look at lobbying spending for the medical part of it, same thing goes on in election integrity. Somebody takes in $20 million claiming this and this and this, and we're going to find it, we're going to fix it. Then comes out midterms or 2022 and says, well, there was nothing really wrong in 2020, but raise more, raise more, raise more. The lobbying effort pays people in DC, just in the medical field, to go hold up the phony science. $290 million a year. You're finding out some of these journals, right? Because here's what happens. These guys send in reports, the journals publish it, and then they say, well, we want to republish what you publish because it's got your name on it. We'll pay you for that, even though it's our work. Sometimes these organizations, to get a pay to promote, to use their name on it, are getting $1 million a paper. We're going to publish phony science. We're going to get you to talk about it on your airway under your name, but we get to use that you're publishing it on your airway under your name, and we're going to pay you a backwards fee to license that because it's going to be using your name, and you're going to get $1 million a year. That is called deep interdependence. This deep interdependence, you have to dig to understand. It all is buying influence. It all is buying influence. This is something I think you should pay attention to. We're going to look to bring you some hardcore numbers in the medical field, but you can apply this to everything. And that is why when you really look at these things, whether it be medical or whether you look at election peddling, it never withstands peer review or digging into it, when they'll also at the same time telling you, no, we peer reviewed the other, and that doesn't work. That's the con. This is why I regularly talk about, folks, we've got to cut the crap, and it's culture, race, and American politics. Let me remind you of a few ways in election integrity this is mimicked. Once again, listen to what she says.
We have peer review, high impact editors in most of the journals that are the most high impact saying that they don't believe what is being published in those journals is trustworthy anymore, and no one cares. Now imagine if the editor of the New York Times came out and said, I think more than 50% of what we're publishing in the New York Times is fake. You think that would ruffle any feathers? But when Marcia Engel does that as the head of the New England Journal of Medicine, it doesn't even make the nightly news. No one's talking about it. The BMJ, the Lancet, all of those editors have come out and said, we have a huge problem. We can't replicate this research, and we actually don't even know who did the research. In some cases, they're going back and trying to find the labs where the research has been done in Iran or China or wherever. The lab doesn't exist. So when I tell you that everywhere we've looked for corruption, we've found it, this is what I want everybody to really take away, because it's not just health. It's literally, the corruption it's penetrated everything.
Now think about 2020, how it fundamentally changed us and what was promoted, who got paid to speak, who got paid to tour, who got exposed.
Did you know one man changed the entire face of election integrity in the USA in 2020? Here is the story. Maybe you have heard it. One man, supposedly, infiltrated an Antifa Zoom call in September 2020. Allegedly, on said call, a voting system company executive said, "Don't worry about the election. Trump is not gonna win. I made fucking sure of that." What was the evidence of such a call ever happening? Nothing. Not a recording, or an email, or a phone record, or even a live witness. But it was not a total loss. For the voting systems company, that is. The voting system company filed $10 billion in lawsuits. Then the voting systems company was paid in excess in $1 billion in damages. A company which had, according to Dun and Bradstreet filings, 36 million in annual sales. The bogus claim enabled the voting system company to make 2,700 more times in these lawsuits than they ever made as a company. Every case which included the bogus story of I infiltrated an Antifa Zoom call was booted from court. On the other hand, the voting system company made out like a bandit. Question is, who was the real bandit? The voting system company, or the one man who claimed the story to begin with? Comment below.
And then you take that story that got everybody sued, and what was the big amplification? Well, this was the big amplification. It was Mike Lindell. And oh, by the way, even though everybody had to pay through the nose, they just recently dropped the suit against him.
How well does your bullshit meter work? Tell me if this passes your sniff test. Mike Lindell claimed to have all the PCAPs from the 2020 general election. Mike then held a cyber symposium to share the PCAPs proof with the world. Yet when the cyber symposium was held, it ended up not being about PCAPs or evidence, but was made about Tina Peters instead. You know Tina. She was sentenced to 9 years in prison. But get this. Mike presented 0 PCAPs at the cyber symposium, but he did broadcast that Tina may have stolen the data from her elections. Result? Tina goes to prison. But here is where it gets worse. Mike Lindell's expert on the PCAPs, Dennis Montgomery, never produced the PCAPs. Mike Lindell admitted in court that he never, ever actually had the PCAPs to begin with. And moreover, Dennis Montgomery could not testify in court about the existence of the mysterious PCAPs since he was a long-protected CIA witness. But here is where it really starts to smell. In Tina's case, the expert dolphin speaker was a fellow named Conan Hayes. He is the person which posed as a county employee to take the election data. But he could not testify on behalf of Tina Peters at her trial because, get this, he is a protected government witness as well. Mike Lindell is 2 for 2 in his choice of experts, while Tina Peters got 9. Where does this rank on your bullshit meter from 1 to 10? Answer below.
This is why I tell you, you've actually watched this play out. You've actually watched how it works. And this is why you need to share this program. You've got to wake up. You've got to become a warrior for provable proof and knowledge, because that's the only way we can fight it. Please, I love you all. Share this program.
Rennie Good was a gifted soul, a writer and a poet and a mother. Wow, she tried to hit an agent with her car. Oh no, pop motherfucker, now she's gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. You fuck around and find out it's what it is. Jeffrey Pretty was a Jewish homo. Started talking shit to protect a chomo. He was getting nicked when he pulled a gun. Bam, motherfucker, now you're gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. Fuck around and find out what that is.
On Election Day 2026, insurgent candidate Spencer Pratt looked like he might flip Los Angeles to the Republicans, edging out socialist candidate Nydia Rahman, setting up a runoff between former communist turned Democrat incumbent Karen Bass and the Republican Pratt. But then something strange happened. After 5 days of counting extra ballots, the socialist Rahman came up with just enough ballots to overtake Pratt, meaning that no matter what happened in the runoff, a Democrat would continue to run LA into the ground. How did the Democrats do it? To answer that question, we need to take a trip down memory lane. The Democratic Party was founded in 1828. Shortly thereafter, party apparatuses such as Tammany Hall institutionalized election theft by stuffing ballot boxes, repeat voting, casting ballots for dead people, bribery, intimidation, absentee ballots, ballot harvesting, and importing voters from outside areas. An audit of a New York City election in 1868, for example, found that 16% of all votes cast were fraudulent, cooked up by Democrats in Tammany Hall. In 1948, Lyndon Johnson infamously stole a Texas Senate seat thanks to the drop of 202 late votes in ballot box 13, giving LBJ an 87-vote victory. That brazen election theft made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, which ultimately didn't want to get involved and washed its hands of the matter. As a result, LBJ went on to become vice president and then president of the United States. In 1994, Democrats tried to steal a state Senate seat in Pennsylvania. On Election Day, Republican Bruce Marks led Democrat William Stinson by over 500 votes. But the absentee ballots curiously went overwhelmingly for the Democrat, giving Stinson just enough votes to win overall. In that case, happily, a federal judge found that Philadelphia election officials had illegally delivered hundreds of absentee ballot packets directly to the Democrats, who in turn collected votes from people who were ineligible to cast votes when they weren't forging the votes outright. Democrats ran precisely the same absentee ballot playbook in 2003 in the East Chicago, Indiana mayor's race, fraud we know about only because the Indiana Supreme Court decided to get involved, ordering a new election, which the Democrat fraudster happily lost. Democrats' reliance on absentee ballot harvesting became so widespread, especially in states such as Illinois, Arkansas, and Georgia, that the 1982 Illinois elections resulted in 62 indictments and 58 convictions for election fraud, involving not only campaign workers, but precinct captains and election officials. In Chicago alone, a grand jury found that 100,000 fraudulent votes had been cast. But Chicago had already been a central hub of Democrat election theft for decades, most infamously exemplified by the 1960 presidential election, in which Robert Dallek, a biographer of both John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, concluded that Democrats, quote, probably stole Illinois from Nixon. In 2020, Democrat politicians infamously changed voter laws throughout the United States to increase absentee ballots and insecure ballot drop boxes, in some cases, such as Pennsylvania, in violation of the state constitution. Despite claims of perfectly secure elections, hundreds of Democrats over American history have been convicted over election fraud, and those convictions represent only a small percentage of cases, which represent only a small percentage of allegations of voter fraud widely acknowledged by historians and really by anyone with eyes. In Los Angeles, we see the same old story. A Republican defeated by the last-minute count of absentee ballots, cast without any solid chain of custody, often in ballot drop boxes without any election security. Those circumstances might all be perfectly legal, at least in a Democrat stronghold such as Gomorrah by the Sea. But we're still left with a simple question. If Democrats want us to believe there isn't any voter fraud, why do they keep expanding the use of all the same tricks they've used to steal elections for the past 200 years?
The upcoming 2026 midterms could be a bloodbath for Republicans? How? Consider this. On Election Day 2008, Barack Obama received 69 million votes. In his second term, he racked up 65 million votes, and he was considered the Democrat rock star president. Then Hillary ran against Donald Trump. She received the same 65 million votes. But come 2020, Joe Biden supposedly received 81 million votes. Was he really more popular than Obama or Hillary? Of course not. But that is not the half of it. In the 2024 election, Kamala Harris received 68 million votes. But did you know that now it's almost 2 years after that election, and somehow Kamala Harris has been elevated to over 75 million votes? How does a candidate get 8 million more votes after the election? Is this an attempt to validate the fraudulent 81 million vote fantasy from 2020? You bet. One thing stands between chaos and correcting history, and that is the historic 2020 full forensic archive of Maricopa County, Arizona, the single most detailed full audit of a presidential election in American history, audited over 2 million ballots, generated over 20,895,000 individual proof files. This took 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. This evidence must be kept for any and all future court cases, Supreme Court cases, and preserved for all time, eventually at the Trump Presidential Library. That is why we need you. You, the people, made this history happen, and now you, the people, can have a hand in making sure this evidence is saved for future generations. Please donate. Please help us. Donate now to continue to preserve in a chain of custody state of the only legal court-ready evidence of the 2020 election disaster, the 2.1 million physical ballots, the single largest forensic audit of a presidential election in American history. Please donate now and preserve history.